Hi, Professor Rao. How are you?
I am doing just fine. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I come out before the presentation just to warn you that this presenter, Gassman, he's very, very mediocre. He's very easily confused, and you have to go really slow for him.
Oh, he's just like the rest of us, in other words.
Right, but I had a couple of questions. I know you address reality and perception of reality. How does that apply to a puppet?
My dear puppet, there is no reality. Perception is the reality.
Wow, because it seems real. It seems very real.
I know that is your perception, and that is the reality.
And what do you think about PI, puppet intelligence?
Oh, puppet intelligence is orders of magnitude superior to human intelligence.
Nice. So, Professor Rao, do you have a puppet?
No, I don't have a puppet, but now I know that it's so much fun. I'm going to go out and get one. Do you have a brother who's looking to relocate?
No, but I have a sister and she's very attractive.
Okay, fine. That makes it even better.
Right. Okay, here comes Gassman. The show's going downhill from here.
Okay, and I'll remember that he's not particularly bright, and I'll speak in words of one syllable.
Thank you. Okay, don't fall down. I won't. Adjusting camera. Welcome everybody to this presentation that you definitely need during the holiday season when you see all of your favorite and least favorite relatives, relationship tactics for successful professionals. And I have here with me the most important influence on my life and on my professional life, and that is none other than Professor Srikumar Rao, a retired professor from Columbia University, a philosopher, a top 50 worldwide speaker, and we're going to talk about relationship tactics. Just a little bit of housekeeping here. This is a 1-hour presentation. For those of you who are CPAs or enrolled agents, I think you have to stay at least most of the 1 hour. There's going to be 4 polling questions. Please answer them as quickly as you can. If you don't know the answer, make one up immediately. That's what we were told in law school when the professor called on us. And after the 1 hour, I'm going to do some shameless self-promotion of my Estate View software, and you will not get credit for it, but just want you to know that we will do that because we get a lot of questions about it. So if you came in through CPA Academy, you're good to get your credit. If you came in through our website, you're not going to get credit unless you're a Florida lawyer. And then if you're a Florida lawyer, you don't deserve credit, but we will give you credit. If you want to ask a question, and Professor Rao loves tough questions. So this is your time to ask a tough question for a worldwide scholar and philosopher. You go to the upside down pyramid. It's best if you become upside down, type your question, and then if we have time, we will answer the question. We'll leave 5 or 10 minutes for the end. And we welcome Janice, Arlen, Michelle, Kevin, Sharon, Barbara, David, and Barbara, who have already said hello. And we're looking forward to your questions. In about 3 hours, a copy of this video will be emailed to you. Please share it with everybody, including those relatives that you don't like, because we're going to help you with your holiday season. So Professor Rao, now that I've hogged the first 3 minutes of the presentation, what do you have to say? And hello.
Hello, Alan. I was about to say, don't share the recording even with them. Share it especially with the relatives you don't like.
Very good. So in 2011, I was in a coaching program. The coach walks in. There were about, I think, 30 of us in New York City. She walks in and she says, I just met the brightest man, the coolest guy that I've ever even imagined could exist. His name is Srikumar Rao, and he just wrote a book called Are You Ready to Succeed? And I've been reading the book, and it has been changing my life. And I immediately bought the book and I sent an email to Professor Rao and asked him if he was going to be having executive programs in New York. I would love to attend one, but back then they were every Friday, and I wasn't going to fly to New York 9 or 10 times. So 3 years later, he reached out to me. I went to his three-day weekend course, and it was just an incredible experience. Professor Rao grew up in India. He learned a lot about Buddhism from his mother and from influential leaders there. He learned a lot about Hinduism. He got a physics degree there. Then he was an amazing scholar, so he got a full ride to Columbia for an MBA, then a PhD. Then he produced the movie The Exorcist, and then he went back to the university. He started a course called Creativity and Personal Mastery. It became, and to this day is, the most popular graduate school course in the world. He taught it at Stanford, he taught it at London School of Business, he taught it at Columbia. And for those of you who have been fortunate enough to attend his cyber course, his live interactive cyber course, or his workshops, you're very lucky. 3 books. Modern Wisdom is the latest one, really, really good. Happiness at Work, awesome. And Are You Ready to Succeed? Srikumar, did I miss anything?
No, but I want to make a slight correction, Alan. I did not produce The Exorcist. I simply handled the advertising for The Exorcist.
Right, I'm sorry. That's what I intended.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Srikumar, let's just start off, and I don't think we need to have slides here. Let's start off with, when you meet with people, you counsel people, what are the biggest misconceptions that you have to work through in our terrible little brains about relationships?
Okay. Let me talk a little bit about networking, Alan, because that's something on everybody's mind. When I came to Columbia Business School, on the very first day that I was there, we were greeted by some big shot. I forget whether it was the dean of Columbia Business School or the coordinator of the doctoral program, but some big wig. And he gave a talk. And 1/3 of the talk was how great we all were because we got admitted to Columbia Business School. The next third of the talk was how great Columbia Business School was. And the final third of the talk is, now that we've established that you're great and Columbia Business School is great, this is a wonderful opportunity, don't blow it, go out, network, 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 network. And I was a lousy networker. By the time I finished my PhD at Columbia Business School, after being many years there, the size of my network was 0. I didn't know. I even lost touch with my dissertation advisor. And subsequently, many years of teaching at business school, the very idea of networking makes people uneasy and uncertain. Because the way networking is typically understood is, let's figure out who could be potentially of help to me and ingratiate myself with that person as soon as possible. It is inherently self-serving. And people think they ought to do it, they try to do it, but they never feel very comfortable with it. So I've evolved a completely different take on networking. And this is something, Alan, that you have mastered. In fact, you mastered it to a greater ability than I do. So I'm going to ask you for some tips later on. And my thing basically is, don't try to network. Don't try to create a network, build a network, form a network. Expunge that thought from your head. Instead, allow a network to spring up around you. And how do you allow a network to spring up around you? It's very simple. As you go through life, you run across people who inspire you. Maybe you read about them, you see them on television, you hear them in meetings that you have attended, but you really feel inspired by that person. What do you typically do when you get inspired by a person? Well, you get inspired and it lasts for an hour a day, and then it fades away, and life goes on as usual. Big mistake. Every time you're inspired by someone, that is the universe nudging you. Make a note of it. Who was the person? What were the circumstances? What was it about the person that inspired you? And if you make a list of that, I recommend keeping a notebook for this. Over time, you'll find that there are many, many, many entries in that. Go back to it, read it again, and see who are the people who continue to inspire you. And then what you do is you reach out to that person. And you reach out to that person, first of all, with a note saying, hey, this is what you did, and here's how inspiring it was for me, and this is why. And believe me, even the most famous of persons, if they get such an email, it really makes an impact. But you don't just stop by saying, this is how I was inspired. Come up with a specific offer of help. This is what I would like to do to help you. And if you do this on a regular basis, and I have an exercise in my program where I have people reach out to at least 2 people a week in such a manner, a fair number of your offers of help will be accepted. And I don't have to mention that if you do offer help, you should be perfectly sincere and ready, able, and willing to deliver that help. And you're doing it not because you want to form a network, but you're doing it because you're helping someone who's doing something you value. And if your offer of help is accepted and you deliver, you're doing something which will make the world a better place, and you feel good about that. And if you do that on a consistent basis, within a year, I will guarantee you, you have a very wide network of people who will go to bat for you. Because most of the time when we talk about networking, we're reaching out from a self-interest point of view. What can I get out of this relationship? Reaching out from a self-interested perspective, it does work because there are a lot of people who are doing it, but it doesn't make you feel very good about it. It's very labor intensive. Reaching out in the manner that I have just outlined, you're reaching out from a values perspective. And when you reach out from a values perspective, you're always more powerful in your outreach, and you're received in a more welcoming fashion. So the first thing about relationships, Alan, is when you are in any kind of an interaction, forget about you. A lot of the times you're speaking to people and you're not really listening to them. You're thinking about what is the next brilliant remark that I can make. Get rid of yourself. Get rid of yourself. Simply look at, be grateful that here is another human being sharing something with me. And maybe you say, what an egotistical, pompous ass. I don't want to spend any time with him. Regardless, you're on interaction, even if he is an egotistic, pompous ass, listen to him and send out healing thoughts towards him. How terrible it must be to be such an egotistical, pompous ass. And being compassionate at him. And as you start doing that, and as you start entering any kind of interaction, not from a me-centered perspective, but from a what can I do to help this person perspective, you'll be amazed at how it changes. Can I share a story, Alan?
Yes, please.
Okay, this is something that comes from the Native American tradition, and it talks about a young man who was about to take his place with the adults of the tribe. And the final rite of passage was a conversation with the medicine man. And the medicine man told him, here is this dog, kind, intelligent, loving, trustworthy. And here is this wolf, malevolent, vicious, ready to snap at and kill anything. And the dog and the wolf are both fighting. And the dog and the wolf are both inside you. And the young man asks, which one's going to win? And the medicine man says, whichever one you feed. So look at this. Inside each one of us are altruistic, let's help each other and make the world a better place impulses. And inside each one of us, there's a let me grab everything I can for myself, and the devil take the hindmost impulses, and the two are always fighting. It's incumbent upon you to selectively identify and feed the dog in you. It's also incumbent upon you to selectively feed the dog in everyone you meet. And when the dog in you becomes friends with the dog in the other person, magic happens in both your lives. All too often, we feed the wolf and we don't even know we're feeding the wolf. I'll give you an example. You're having a bad day at work and you go to the coffee machine to grab yourself a cup of coffee, and a colleague comes up and says, I'm having a bad day at work. And you say, you're having a bad day at work? Let me tell you about my bad day at work. And your bad day at work easily trumps his bad day at work. And you go off feeling smug. And you never realize that you fed the wolf both in yourself and the other person. If instead you'd gone, I've had a bad day at work, you've had a bad day at work, we both work here, is there anything we can collectively do to make sure nobody has such a bad day at work? Then you started feeding the dog. So, in every conversation you have, every interaction you have with your spouse, with your children, with your relatives, with your colleagues, with your customers, ask yourself, am I feeding the dog or am I feeding the wolf? Am I talking, acting, behaving in a manner which leaves this person feeling better about himself, the state of the world, or am I pulling him down into a negative vortex? Am I feeding the dog or am I feeding the wolf? And if you make a conscious effort to wherever I am and whatever interaction, I'm going to be feeding the dog, you'll be amazed at how your relationships transform.
Yeah, I'm just going to add that what you're saying not only makes beautiful sense, but works. Because you told me about this in 2013 when I took your course, and now when someone's being a jerk or someone is, way off or somebody is very upset, it's easy to say, "Oh, I'll punch back. I'll tell them what an idiot they are." But it's much better to say, "Well, wouldn't you rather be nice to this? And wouldn't you rather, shouldn't we take the high road here? Why don't you think about it and get back with me?" And we found that some pretty big bullies will take the high road if you just ask them politely to please take the high road. Please stop punching me in the face and please just take the high road.
What you're discovering, Alan, is the Pygmalion effect. And in the Pygmalion effect, what you're really doing is you're not looking at who the person is being. You're painting a picture of who the person could be, and you're inviting the person to fill that role.
Beautiful.
And many, many times they're ready to step up into the vision that you painted for them.
Perfect. All right, we're going to go now to the first polling question, the first one of four. And we need 90% of the people to answer this in order to go to back to the presentation. The answer is E, all of the above if you like, or any of them. Sri Kumar was born in India, has a physics degree from Delphi University, has MBA and PhD degrees from Columbia, is a best-selling author, is a TED speaker, and even his wife loves him. E, all of the above. Nina's very, very patient. Joe, how are we doing? 91%. All right, let's close the polling. And then Joe, I'm going to go ahead and do the second polling question just to get two out of the way. Don't tell anyone we did them back to back. I can improve my relationships by A, being friendly, B, bringing out the best in others, C, being kind to myself, or D, all of the above. So when he talked about feeding the dog, it's not just feeding their dog, it's feeding your own dog and starving off your wolf. Feeding your winners and starving off your losers is something that David Finkel says a lot. I guess it's all about food during the holidays. How are we doing, Joe? 87. Good enough. You round 87 up to 90, we're good. All right. So Sri Kumar, we're talking about relationships. We're talking about getting together with relatives. Tell us about the toxic person and how we should relate to and handle ourselves and the toxic person.
uh, Alan, my course was among the most popular and highest rated at many of the world's top business schools. Columbia, London Business School, Kellogg, Berkeley, Imperial College. These are not warm, fuzzy places. Many students who took my course got jobs in the financial industry, investment banking, venture capital, private equity. These are not warm, fuzzy places. So I can't tell you the number of stories I have of my students calling out for help because they've had toxic bosses or toxic colleagues. So any number of ways to deal with them. The first one is actually one of the simplest. So one of my students was complaining to me about a toxic boss, and I said, let's hold it there. Can you visualize the stuff that the emotions that are rolling around in this person, that are roiling this person? The anger, the insecurity, the jealousy. Can you feel all of that sloshing in that person? And they're not. Yes, yes, of course. They can clearly see all of that joshing around. And I tell them, you only have to deal with this person a couple of hours a week. He has to live with himself his entire life. And the moment I say that, they smile. And that's important because in that smile is the seed of compassion. And then you recognize that this is an entity, a human being who is suffering a great deal. And it's entirely true that 99% of that suffering is something he brought on himself, but he never recognizes that. Similarly, 90% of the suffering that you have, or I have, or the people on this webinar have, is brought on by themselves. And they may not recognize it. But the moment you recognize that this other person has all of these things sloshing around and he has to live with himself his entire life, as I said, you see the compassion, and then you see the other person not as a malevolent individual, but simply someone who's deeply hurt and he's lashing out. And in that lashing out, he could hurt you. So obviously, you will do whatever you can to protect yourself from the adverse effects of that, but you will do it out of compassion as opposed to anger. That's one good strategy. Then let me share another strategy with you. One of my students came up and said, Professor Rao, you really don't understand how bad things are with me. She had a boss. He was one of these hedge fund zillionaires. He had a new firm and he was very autocratic and totally without inhibition. So whenever he got whenever he got mad at someone, he pulled himself up to his full height. He was, not very tall. So, he nevertheless pulled himself to his full height, thrust his face into the face of the person he was angry at, and start screaming, and his face would turn red and bits of spit would fall out, would spew out and fall wherever. And he said, that's the situation I'm in and I can't take it anymore. And the moment my bonus check clears, I'm out of here. And I said, fine, I can understand that, but you have spent time in the company, you've built up your human capital here, and when you go off, you're going to be walking away from all of that. He said, what can I do? I'm not going to stay here. So I told her a story. When my kids were young, we had gone to Disney World, and we were in line for a queue, and it was a long line. It was hot, and there was a man behind us, and he had a small child, must have been 8, 9, something like that. And the child would go around and bother other people in the line, and he would touch them with sticky fingers, and they didn't like being touched with sticky fingers, so they'd glare at the father, and the father would be embarrassed, and he'd pull the kid close and hold him tight. But when he pulled the kid close and held him tight, the boy would start screaming, so he had to let him go. So just an uncomfortable situation. And then the mother appeared, and with this instinct that mothers have, she was able to look behind his behavior and say, he's hungry, and she produced food. And in less than 10 minutes, there was a remarkable transformation. Far from being a pest, he was the life and soul of that line, and everybody was laughing at him and laughing with him. And it was a complete transformation. So I narrated this to my student and said, when your boss is screaming, he's just a kid throwing a tantrum. She was singularly unconvinced and unimpressed. But a few days after that, she did something which got her boss upset, and he went his usual route. He pulled himself to his full height, he thrust his face into her face. His face grew red, and bits of spit started flying. And everything I said was so apropos that this was a kid throwing a tantrum that she couldn't help herself. She burst out laughing. He was completely taken aback. What did you do? But something changed in her head at that time, and she no longer saw her boss as an ogre. She simply saw him as a kid throwing a tantrum. Of course, this is a grown up kid, so I have to protect myself from it, and I'll do that. But, I see him just as a kid having a tantrum. But the interesting thing, Alan, is that when that shift happened in her head, their relationship changed. And he behaved exactly the way he did with everybody else, but he never shouted at her again. And 6 months later, she got a better job offer and she left, and the situation dissolved. But it's important for you to know that in any dynamic which is toxic, whether you like it or not, whether you realize it or not, you're adding to the toxicity. And when you determine that you're not going to add to the toxicity, you'll be amazed at how often and how quickly the toxicity drains out. Won't happen in every case, but it'll happen in a fair number of cases.
Yeah.
That's something we realize and learn.
When I took your course the first time in 2013, the first 3-day weekend, I did breakout sessions with at least 6 or 7 people, and their biggest problem was usually another person.
Mm-hmm.
And it was usually a fear of that person, a frustration of that person. It was usually a toxic boss, because these people were in New York City, and apparently New York City has more than its share of toxic bosses.
Yes, indeed.
But when I came back the next month and I said, "Hey, Margaret, what's going on with the toxic boss?" She said, "Oh, he doesn't bother me anymore."
Mm-hmm.
And then she gave me her new problem. It was just, sometimes the best advice for a client or a friend is, okay, just don't worry about it. You can't change that. Stop worrying about it.
Exactly. Make your peace with it.
Worry about, but the other thing was, a lot of people in your course were afraid to talk to their toxic boss. So we said, well, the next time your toxic boss explodes, after the explosion, say, hey, I'm sorry, what did I do to cause that? What can I do to not have that happen again? Being a polite adult in the room. And then, as you said, now they're saying, oh, they're going to call me on that. If I act like a child, she's going to become an adult. I guess it doesn't do any good to blow up anymore.
They go.
Now, you also tell a great story about someone who drops a camera and, and being upset about human nature. Do you want to tell us
Yeah.
that story?
Sure. So a lot of the time, Alan, the stuff that plagues our relationships is guilt or blame. You know, you're guilty because you think you did something which you shouldn't have done, or you blame someone because they did something that they shouldn't have done, and you have it in a head. And I would like you to think about everything that happened as part of an inviolable rule, a rule of the universe. And that rule is everybody at all times acts in his or her perceived best interest. Everybody at all times acts in his or her perceived best interest, including you. So think of it as a law of nature. So let's assume you're a photographer and you bought a camera, and it's a very expensive camera with all kinds of bells and whistles, and it cost you $10,000. And you're very proud of this camera and the great photos you're going to take, and you're out on a hike and you're climbing a mountain, and you see a beautiful multicolored bird, and it flies below the mountain, and you look off and there's a ledge, and the bird is parked on the ledge, and it's a great opportunity for you to take a National Geographic award winning photograph, and you got your new camera to do it with. So you go around and you focus on the bird, and you're about to take the picture when your hand slips and the camera falls down, and it's not a camera anymore. So what do? You could blame yourself for being an idiot for not having a strap around your neck before you took that. You could blame the weather conditions that made it slip. But there's one thing you don't do, Alan. You don't blame the law of gravity. Whoa, law of gravity. Didn't you know how valuable the camera was and how much I loved it? And could you just have suspended operation for a few seconds so I could grab my camera back? You law of gravity, I despise you. It never even occurs to you to blame the law of gravity because it's inviolable. It is what it is. So in exactly the same way, in any relationship, when someone does something, they're acting in the same principle as the law of gravity. They're acting in their perceived self-interest, and everybody does that. And the moment you recognize that, you stop blaming them and you stop blaming yourself. Guilt is simply blaming yourself. So recognize that everybody is acting in the law in their perceived self-interest, and that's the law of the universe. And the moment you do that, both blame and guilt drop away. And when blame and guilt drop away in a relationship, you see each person at each instant as they are. Normally what happens is we never see people as they are. We see them through the lens of all the accumulated interactions we've had. Oh, there was this party at which he insulted me, and there was this other way in which he did me wrong, and you carry all that as a great big baggage. But if you recognize he did what he did simply because he was acting in his perceived self-interest, and you do the same, then all that baggage drops away. And that has an amazing impact upon relationships.
Absolutely.
Excuse me.
Prikamar, I think you've indicated 3 or 4 times now you just changed the way you look at things. Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you've written and pioneered in the area of mental models and mental chatter? So at least to open the door to let people know that book, Are You Ready to Succeed, has a lot of really heavy duty, effective methods. Okay. You could give us a little background.
Absolutely. So I've got to just describe 2 concepts to you first, Alan. Number one is the concept of mental chatter, which is an internal monologue that we have going on in our heads all the time. Oh gosh, do I have to attend another of Alan's interminable webinars again? But I need the credit, so let me get on. All of that is mental chatter. You've always had it. It begins when you get up in the morning, is with you throughout the day, is with you right now. And what do we do with the mental chatter? It's like an unwelcome relative who showed up at your house and you can't throw him out. So what we do is we ignore it, suppress it, work around it. We do our best to live our life despite our mental chatter. That's a big mistake. And the reason it's a big mistake is because we construct our life with our mental chatter and our mental model. So mental model is a notion that we have that this is the way the world works. The problem is not that we have mental models. Mental models are great things. They help you make sense of unstructured situations. They save you time. The problem is not that you have mental models. The problem is that you don't recognize that you have mental models. You think this is the way the world works. It's not the way the world works. It's your model of the way the world works. And the more you believe in it, the more it seems that this is exactly the way the world works. And very soon you construct a silo around yourself that's so thick it's almost impossible to break out of. So the first thing is to recognize that you have mental models, and many of these mental models are not serving you well. But you built your life around that. You think you live a real life, you don't. You live in a construct. Every single one of us is living in a matrix. Only this is not a matrix built by an alien civilization out to enslave us. It's something that we constructed with our mental chatter and our mental models. I'll give you a concrete example to tell you how this works. So, I had a student in one of my classes who had a pretty horrific childhood, orphaned early, sexually molested, and a bunch of things happened. Passed through a bunch of foster homes, but she was very bright, so she got a degree from an Ivy League college, and then she came to do a top school MBA. And she was hired because she was very bright, but then she was fired because she couldn't get along with anyone, and that happened a number of times. And the story she was telling herself is, well, I passed through this totally distressing back childhood, and that's why I am the way I am, and there's nothing I can do about myself. Shortly after taking my course, she changed the story she was telling herself. And the new story she told herself was, because of what has happened to me, I have had personal experience of a range of human behavior that most people never get to witness. And I've seen both the very best and the very worst of human nature. And because of this exposure, I am better able to deal with any person who comes my way. It took her a while for that story to get established, but once it did, she got hired and she didn't get fired, and she got a successful career for herself. So when you change the story of your life, when you change the story you're telling yourself, and we're always telling ourselves stories, you'll find that your life changes. It's a super powerful technique. Recognize the story you're telling yourself, recognize that it's only a story, and if it's not serving you well, change the story you're telling yourself.
And how many of those mental models can you change at a time?
You can change it. You have any number of mental models, but my strong recommendation is don't work with more than one mental model at a time. Depending on how strongly your old model is embedded, it could take you anywhere from 3 weeks to 3 months to change it. Wait until you're firmly convinced that your new model is in place, and then and only then pick up another model and do an exactly similar thing. What I generally recommend to people is who take my course or in my coaching program is I tell them to alternate, meaning if one model that you work on is a business related model, make the next one a personal life related model. So alternate. But if you do this process consistently, and how you do it is something that I outline in my book, Are You Ready to Succeed? In the course of an year, you will have changed anywhere from 3 to 5 different mental models that you have that were not serving you well, and you will find your life transformed.
So I know you do coaching for very, very successful executives and other people, billionaire class people, Fortune 400 executives. What's a common mental model? What's a common, what I call a limiting belief that you?
I can tell you this. I have a unique niche, Alan, in my coaching. I coach people who are very successful, who want to make a dent in the universe. They really want to have an outsized impact. But they also have an explicitly spiritual drive that they want to bring into every aspect of their life. And in the back of their head, they have a model that, maybe I can sit down and meditate 8 hours a day and grow spiritually, or I can become a business titan. And my job is to show them it's not or, it's and, that becoming a business titan is your spiritual path. And how do you go about doing that? That's what my coaching is all about. But you can see the eureka going on when I talk about, hey, you got a misconception. A lot of people, and I'm willing to bet a lot of people on this call are stressed and overwhelmed, and they have the feeling, this is too bad. I have to set up a meditation practice. And, I'll meditate for 20 minutes a day or so on. I'll do TM, or I'll set up my independent practice and I'll meditate a half an hour or an hour a day, or I'll go on a Vipassana retreat. Then the model they have is, this will straighten out my life. What I share with them is, hey, that's useless. You have spent decades building up your mental chatter, and it has such a momentum, so much momentum, that a meditating 20 minutes or a half hour a day is going to make no difference. At best, it'll slow down the rate of increase of the momentum of your mental chatter. If you really want to come to grips with it, your entire life has to be a meditation. Let me repeat that. Your entire life has to be a meditation. Everything that you do at work, at home, is a meditation. How do you accomplish that? That's what my coaching is about. But the mindset shift, this is something that I'm going to do. Meditation has helped me. I completely blow that apart? And that's when they start realizing, yes, this is what I need in my life.
What do you define as a meditation? Do you mean just the life experience, the voice?
Explicit recognition that you are living in a myth. You're not who you think you are. You're not Alan Gassman, who's a prosperous and becoming more prosperous real estate and estate planning attorney. You're pure spirit playing a role, and the role you're playing is that of a very successful estate planning attorney. But that's the role. And the more you identify with that role, the more you get caught in the ups and downs of that role, flitting between elation and despair. But if you realize this is simply a game that you're playing, and you're pure spirit having a human experience, and you're anchored in that, then you find that it's enjoyable. Even the stuff when you're down is enjoyable. And
So it's
that's
about
what I want all my clients to get into.
So does that relate to your story of the actor on a stage?
Absolutely. Yes, it does. You are the actor. Shakespeare said it. All the world's a stage and all the people play merely actors. That's what you're doing. You're acting. Play the role with gusto. Enjoy it thoroughly. But recognize that you are an actor playing a role. Don't identify with the character. Identify with the actor. And when I talk about your life as a meditation, it is when you constantly recognize that who you are is pure self. That's what was meant, when St. Paul said, I live, yet not I, Christ liveth in me. That's what he was talking about, is letting the channel flow through. When you do a great job for your client and your client says, thank you, you didn't do it. The good flowed through you. And when you recognize that all of the good that you're doing is flowing through you and not coming from you or by you, then you're meditating, as long as you're anchored in that. And when you're doing that, you'll find that, yes, your entire life is a meditation. It's grace flowing through. Your job is to receive the grace and be grateful for it. But it didn't happen from you or by you. You're the FedEx guy, you're delivering it. The universe is doing its thing, it's helping clients through you, and you're grateful that you're being used as a tool, but you never let your ego get in the way and say, I did it.
So the people I know who always seem really happy and always kind of laugh when things go wrong, they see the world in a comedic way, they're high achievers. This was either learned in high school or eventually they figured out it's not all real, it's not all so serious, it's more about enjoying the experience
Exactly.
having to feel that if you don't get the result, you're an unhappy failure.
Exactly correct. Right on.
Right. Okay, let's do another polling question, our last one here. That's very, very good advice. Okay. Great books. How to Win Friends and Influence People. Are You Ready to Succeed? Happiness at Work. Modern Wisdom, Ancient Roots, or all of the above. And B, C, and D are fantastic books by Sri Kumar that I would highly recommend. Joe, everybody's awake? All right, we're good. Everybody's on the ball. So Sri Kumar, tell us about Modern Wisdom, Ancient Roots, and how you packed 1,000 wonderful content into one book. And one chapter, Put Down the Suitcase. Chapter 48.
Okay. We go through, this was actually a lesson which was imparted to me by my teacher, my guru, Alan. So I went to him before I came to America, and I was young and I was eager to set the world on fire, and I was going to get a PhD from this great university and do great things, and I wanted his help, and please do this for me and do that for me. And he listened to me quietly, and he said, Sri Kumar, the train is big enough and powerful enough to carry you and your suitcases. You don't have to carry the suitcases on your head. And at that time, it didn't make much sense to me. But now it makes profound sense. We're going around carrying the weight of the world on our things. Oh, what's going to happen with my client? And, he's got this complicated case, and I really do have to help him. And the burden is on me. You pick up a lot of burdens. And you don't really have to do that if you realize that you are the actor, not the character. A very good way of looking at it, Alan, is Lincoln. Lincoln, we talk about Abraham Lincoln as a great orator, but typically when you're thinking of him as a great orator, you're thinking of the Gettysburg Address, which is a dynamite speech. I'm not downplaying it at all. But in his second inaugural, Lincoln said, with charity for all, with malice towards none, with charity for all, let us do the right as God gives us to see the right. Notice, he doesn't say, I'm going to do the right. He says, I'm going to do the right as God gives us to see the right. What God gives us to see the right tomorrow may be different from what God gives us to see the right today. And tomorrow we will do differently. We will do what God gives us to see the right at that point. So if at every given point you are doing what God gives you to see the right, then it's his responsibility. And whatever happens is exactly what he has chosen and decided will happen. So you put the suitcases down, you're at ease. Whatever happens is fine. That was what God decided would happen. You were the instrument, and you're grateful to be the instrument. You did the very best you could with the tools given to you. And the outcome, not your problem anymore. And when you sincerely have that, you'll find you put down the suitcase and you'll find the joy seeps into your life. It rushes into your life. You'll always do the best you can. You will do the right as God gives you to see the right. Put down the damn suitcase.
That's a really good analogy.
And I must also emphasize, Alan, that most of the time we put down the suitcases, but the way we have been constituted, putting down the suitcases is not a one-time and it's done business, because very often we go up and without recognizing it, we pick up the suitcase again. So the trick is to put the suitcase down and not pick it up again.
So give us some examples of what may be suitcases for a practicing lawyer or CPA or one of our wealthy clients.
So you got a wealthy client and he's got himself into a tax mess, he's being completely audited, and he's all hung up and he shouts at you for that. And you tell him, hey, listen, you did things, perhaps intentionally, perhaps unintentionally, but whatever you do, there are consequences, and your net worth is sufficient that you can handle whatever the consequences are. So don't go around berating yourself and simply accept this as a life lesson. And he say yes, but the next day he gets a call from the auditor and he gets all upset again, and you have to point out that he can survive and thrive and use this as a lesson. And he says, yeah, okay, that's fine, and he puts it down, and then he gets upset again when something else happens. And you pass them through that process, and it's your job and responsibility, Alan, is to point out, hey, you picked up the suitcase that you put down again. And you'll particularly find this happens when there are intimate relations involved, like when there are disputes over property or divorces or things like that. And you point out that all of the problems that you created, a big part of the problems are because of your mental chatter. And you learn to recognize that and not identify with it. That's how you put the suitcases down. But it's your job as the attorney to be instantly aware of the fact that they've picked up again the suitcases they put down, and to remind them to put them down again.
You also, going back to relationships, I remember I gave a little talk, a little assignment in 2013 of I think I called it 40 really neat things I can do with my wife, with Marcia.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't racy enough for a lot of the people in the group, but I came up with 40 neat things we could do, improve the relationship. And then you talked about the relationship as a journey. I don't know if you recall what you said, but it had a really nice impact on me and my relationship with Marcia and everyone in the room. Do you recall that, or do you want me to tell you what you said?
Tell me what I said. I don't recall that incident, huh?
Well, in short, you said, your spouse is not your servant, not your status symbol, not your business partner. Your spouse is on a journey with you.
Yeah.
Your spouse is a journey mate.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk about that? Because a lot of people, my partners are journey mates. My clients are journey mates. My colleagues are journey mates. So we're on a journey together. Do you want to talk about that?
So are your children. So here is the thing. In India, in ancient India, the notion was that when you get married, two people come together not primarily for procreation or sexual gratification or anything like that. You come together because you're both on a journey to God. And the purpose of the union is to help each other on the journey to God. Now, the concept of romantic love and fulfillment is prevalent all over. It's there in Hollywood, it's there in Bollywood, and all over. So you're now looking upon marriage as this person is going to help me achieve what I want. Sexually, prestige wise, or whatever, that's where all the trophy wives come in and things of that nature. And inherent is in that is a me-centeredness, and you always come to the point of, oh, this person is not fulfilling me anymore. Either you've changed or she's changed, or somehow or other the relationship isn't fulfilling your needs, and that's what you're looking for paramount. Dead wrong. When you enter into a relationship, simply say, this relationship was given to me as a tool for me to work on myself. And the more skillfully I use this tool to work on myself, the better the relationship will be. And it is always your job, especially with your partner, to feed the dog, not the wolf, and paint out this is how we are going. And when you start doing that, you'll find the relationship changes. With a major relationship like marriage, which could last decades is there, people evolve. And as they evolve, the nature of the relationship changes. My relationship with Mina is very different from what it was when we got married. And I'd say it's probably better now than it's ever been. And we've just been married 42 years now. It evolves, let it evolve, and celebrate each and every part of it.
And close the cabinets.
And close the cabinets.
All right, we've got one last.
Toilet seat down.
Okay. Polling question number 4. Joe just reminded me. Thank you very much. See, Joe handed me a note. Need to conduct 4th poll. I can't do this alone. All right, our mental models are A, unique in the way we view reality. B, can be improved gradually with time and effort. C, are the foundation of how we think about and experience our lives. And D, all of the above. Any answer is the right answer. How are we doing, Joe?
We're at 90%.
90%, all good. Everybody's up and cranking. So we're going to close off the polling. Okay.
Do we have any questions from the audience, Alan?
Yeah, let me go to questions from the audience. I've been asking their questions as we've been talking. Tell us more about communicating through, not through my brain, but through having the universe pass what I'm doing through me. That was one question.
Okay. Alan, have you ever been in a situation where you were dealing with someone, a client or whoever, who was so angry, agitated, that just being in that person's presence put you on edge?
Absolutely.
Okay. So recognize what is happening. We are all at all times emitting vibrations, which impact the other people in our vicinity. Sometimes they recognize it, sometimes they don't. But when you're in the presence of a person like the one I just described, what is happening is that his vibrations are so strong that they're reaching out and grabbing you and pulling you into his vortex. Your job is to be anchored so firmly in your vortex of calm, peace, and serenity that you grab him and pull him into your vortex of peace. One of the people who's had the greatest influence on me is an Indian sage called Ramana Maharshi. And there are thousands of records of persons who came to meet him and they wanted help with problems. And they had all kinds of problems, relationship problems, financial problems, my daughter's not getting married problems. And they said, when we came into his presence, something changed. And all of the problems seemed to dissolve when I was sunk into such peace that there are no words for it. Now, Ramana Maharshi was an enlightened being, but that's exactly what was true of the great teachers of history, Jesus, Buddha, all of them. That is the kingdom of heaven. So your job, as I said, is to continue each day growing and consciously recognize that you want to pull that grace into your life and be anchored in it. And when you're anchored in it, you will find that you have the ability to take these storm-tossed, turmoil-ridden people and bring them into your place of calm and serenity. And whatever action you take from there will be the right action, which is why I emphasize it's not that important what you do. It's much more important who you're being as you do that.
Wow. So the next question I see is how much time and effort does it take to make these big changes? And how do you actually do it?
The way you do that actually is by focusing on your mental chatter and your mental models. And the step-by-step guide to that is in my book, Are You Ready to Succeed? So if that is of interest or concern to anyone, I strongly recommend they get a copy of that book and read it.
I think I journaled probably 60 days. I mean, I had immediate benefits from the first 3-day weekend, but journaling daily was very helpful. Concentrating on the one mental model I was trying to improve, and journaling was useful. But also, how important is it? I don't think I could have done this on my own. I did it with your help. I did it with the help of the other people who were in the program at the time. So you can say, no, 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 you have a very flawed mental model.
Yes.
Can you do this alone, you think? Or you could just do it with your close friends?
But it's always a good idea to do it in the company of people, and the people have to have certain parameters. Number one, you've got to be totally rock solid confident that they have your best intentions at heart. And they have to be people who are on their journey of growth themselves. And there are certain other criteria. And again, I've spelled this out in Are You Ready to Succeed? But if you do it in a group, it's so much more powerful, because many times you have mental models, but you're blind to the fact that you have mental models and you can't even see you have mental models. But somebody else can pick it up in a flash and they'll tell you, and then you have a eureka moment. Yes, of course, that's mine.
Right.
And about that, Alan, I got to tell you that the retrospective you wrote for my class was a terrific, one of the best retrospectives. And do I have your permission to use it? I'll anonymize it, but do I have your permission to use it as an example for others?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm very proud of that. But I've seen some pretty good retrospectives from other people for sure. So, for those of you who are becoming fans of Sri Kumar, I recommend you go to his website and read his course syllabus. The course syllabus itself is as good as the 3 books that he's written. I also recommend that you go to YouTube, watch his TED Talk, and then watch the 60-minute talk he gave for Google. Was it Google or Microsoft years ago?
Both, actually. I spoke at both Google and Microsoft. Both the talks are up there. The Google talk is better.
Yeah. And if you're having a hard time with a family member, have them watch Sri Kumar with you, and recognize that he has, 150 hours of things to say. But the core, if you want to do things right, is just follow some practical advice that he's given you today. And if you want to make your life a little bit better, or maybe a lot better, consider his protocol. I call it his protocol. He calls it his program. So, Sri Kumar, I'm going to forward other questions to you by email.
Okay.
I'm going to read one to you, which said, I only signed up for this webinar to get continuing education credit, but this is without a doubt the very best webinar I have ever seen, or probably ever will see. So hey, you can't do much better than that.
Thank the person from me, Alan.
Right, right. Oh, finally, anyone in Tampa Bay, or if you want to come to Tampa Bay sometime, I think in April, May, or June, Sri Kumar will do a little workshop for my friends here and other friends in Tampa Bay. If you're interested in that, just send me an email and we will let you know when he's going to be here. All right, Sri Kumar, thank you so much. I'm going to show off my software now, but I can't thank you enough, not only for a great presentation today, but also for an eternal friendship, and over a decade now from when you've helped me significantly.
My pleasure entirely, Alan. Would you be good enough to send me the comments for the questions from that?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So have a great day, and I'm off to India. So the next time we'll be speaking will be after I come back from India in February.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thanks again, and give a hug to Meena for me.
I'll do that, and give my regards to Marsha.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. All right. So for those of you who are sticking around here, I'm going to show you the Estate View software once again. Please note that there's no continuing education credit for watching this, and the puppet behind me is even bored of it. but a lot of you do stick around for this, and it actually helps me to be able to show it. I'm sorry for the distraction here. I'm just trying to get myself situated. So I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint, I think. And what you could do right now, if you're on your computer, is open your browser. That's the thing on the top of the screen, not in the middle, but the top, and put in estateview.link, ESTATVIEW.link, all caps. And then when it asks for your email, put in test@test.com, TEST@TEST.com. And when it asks for your password, it is top secret. Don't tell anyone, not anyone. And that is the word test. And then when you have done that, what comes up is the introduction to the landing page for Estate View. And we are adding features, we are adding calculators, but I'm going to just give you some of the greatest hits here as far as what we have and some of the recent improvements. There are instructional videos on Estate View that I'm glad to send you if you just send me an email. It is absolutely free until April 1st. We are working with Professor Jerry Hash, Jonathan Blottmacher. I am getting some input from Bob Keebler, from Marty Shinkman. A lot of people are looking at it and using it. So I hope you will consider it as well. First of all, for those of you who are not financial professionals, I'm jealous, but you probably you want to know how some of this stuff works, how finances work, or how Estate View might be able to help you. So one thing is our news feature, and I'm looking for a cough drop here. So you click on news there on the right, and it's showing you 4 news feeds. So now you don't have to just click on a news feed, and you can program it easily by just saying, well, I'd like to see CNBC economy there. I would like to see the New York Times estate planning. I would like to see BBC business. And this automatically updates every 30 minutes. And then you can choose a ticker tape at the bottom. Now you could also look at this at night without waking up your partner. And you can show, and it will also summarize. Let me go back to daytime. So now you're seeing that it is summarizing some of the articles, or there it is. Now it will summarize the articles for you. And you can have up to 7 of these going at the same time. And when you are an Estate View subscriber, you could have a couple of different versions of Estate View running at the same time. So you could have this running full time on your computer. Another thing for non-experts is our life insurance estimator. And I'll show this going forward, but you could just put in your age and whether you're standard or preferred, and it will tell you what life insurance rates might be per million. So some people are curious and don't want to have to talk to a life insurance agent to get at least a rough estimate. So that's something that non-life insurance agents can use with their clients just to talk things through. Also, you may want to run an amortization table, and most of the amortization table calculators on the internet and elsewhere have you enter the interest rate, the principal amount, and the term, and they tell you the monthly payment amount. But what if my client says, I want my son and my daughter-in-law to pay me $20,000 a month. I'm going to loan them, let's say, $1,200,000, or let's say 12 million. Have some fun. I want to know what the applicable federal rate is. You can look it up. Or I want to know what the prime rate is. You can look it up. But I would like to have 5% interest. So I'll crank the interest rate up to 5%. Hello, 5%. There it is. And then I want monthly payments. And like I said, I want them to pay me $20,000 a month. So there's 20,000. And now this tells me how much the payment is across the top. So you can solve for any of these things, and then it does run you the amortization table, and you can show every other year or every year, and you can export it to Excel. So that will save some financial professionals and some laymen some amount of time. The Nest retirement calculator, when I click on Nest, you want to have a financial nest so that your baby birds can hatch and grow up. So this is a 40-year-old, and this 40-year-old is married to a 38-year-old, would like to retire at age 60, may die at age 85, has a $750,000 home growing at 3%, $1 million of investments growing after taxes and costs at 4.25%, would like to retire on $175,000 a year at age 60, would like to leave the children at least $1.5 million, inflation adjusted, and is currently able to save $55,000 a year, increasing with inflation. Well, they're going to need $7,854,000 at retirement, and at the rate they're going, they're going to be $4 million short. To meet this goal, they need to save $144,000 a year more than the $55,000 a year, or at the rate they're going, they could retire at age 72, or if they retire at age 60, they could retire on $84,000 a year. So all the calculators are very similar and do one neat thing. Now I can show them a second scenario. So my second scenario, I click on duplicate, the green duplicate button. And now, what would I like to change? Well, maybe I can show them what would happen if they only want to retire on 100 and let's say 125,000 a year. And instead of saving 55,000 a year, they'll save 65,000, or let's say they'll save 80,000. All right. So now you see calculator number 2 and a better situation. You see that now instead of 55,000, they're saving 80,000. And now you see that they're still behind by 39,000, but they could retire at age 64. Now I can get into more detail with them. As you can see here, when you open Estate View, a calculator, it always starts with the Swift plan, which is simpler. I can click on that, and now I'm in the standard version, and there's a lot more detail. So now it's taking into account not only what I showed you, but other things that would normally apply for a real family. I can still change the retirement age goal. I can now say, you know, I'd like to retire at 150 when I'm 77, but after age 80, I don't think I'll spend more than 100. So then I can change my inflation adjustment, and I can do things like, well, if I had a bigger house but less investments, or if I had a bigger house and a bigger mortgage, what would the difference be? And for each of these solutions, it will tell me, as of today, how much life insurance I need. Because if the primary earner dies right now with these goals and aspirations, they need $4.8 million of life insurance on the primary earner. And then I can click on my life insurance estimator. It knows the person's age. And then if I need $5 million of insurance, I can just click up there to 5. And now it tells me if they're a preferred non-smoker, I can get a 20-year term policy for $3,700 a year. Then I can go back to the module and add $3,700 a year to my expenses, making it even more challenging. But that is the nest. And then this shows me of the two alternatives I just showed you, the green one is a much better situation than the blue one, because the blue one, the first one, they're going to run out of money in 2057, as also indicated in the spreadsheet. When I look at the spreadsheet on the first one, they're running out of money in 2057. So what I can also do, just so you know, from a programming feature, when you're using it and when you're using any of these calculators, I can click on Alter Summary Columns, and these are all the different things that I can show across the top. And the ones in yellow are the ones that I personally like to see. But you may not need to see all of these. So you may want to just take some off and just show the ones you want to see. Click Close, and now it's not as confusing, is it? You could only show what you want to see. You can move the spreadsheet up. I click on the two horizontal lines and I move the spreadsheet up. And then on the spreadsheet, I can choose to show fewer things or more things. I can alter the columns. So I can take out a bunch of the columns so the spreadsheet items that I leave look larger. I can hit fit width, and then I may choose to only show every other line or every third line so that it fits better. And I can export it to an Excel document. I just exported to Excel. I'm opening the Excel document. I'm looking for it because it's on another screen. And there's the Excel document, which I can then amend, do whatever I want with it. So that's the Nest calculator. Going back home, we have calculators for qualified personal residence trusts, grantor retained annuity trusts, self-canceling installment notes, large gifts, private annuities. Let me show you the large gift calculator, because this will be important for your larger clients. So this large gift calculator is showing a 65-year-old who would like to know what would happen if he lives to age 95. He's spending $100,000 a year more than his pension, Social Security, and W-2 earnings. His investments are worth $29 million. They're growing after taxes at 2%. And he's going to make a year one gift of $1 million or $2 million or $7 million or $8 million. And I'm going to change his estate size to $29,500,000 on the fourth gift. So current investments, 29. Oh, need to go down there. Number 4. This needs to be 29,500,000. Okay. And then the third one I accidentally flipped. That's 29.5. All right. So apples to oranges. And anyway, his estate tax savings from a $1 million gift will be $324,000. His estate tax savings from a $2 million gift will be twice as much as that. His estate tax savings from a $7 million gift will be 7 times as much. But once he gets to 7 and he's used up his permanent exclusion, which I'll explain in a minute, the savings goes to $800,000 per million. So this is the simplified version. And that's how the simplified version works. And we're assuming that his exemption will drop to half in 2026 and that he's not splitting the gift with a spouse. Now I'm going to click out of the Swift mode, click right there out of the Swift mode, click OK. And now it's showing me a lot more information about these 4 scenarios. And what it's showing me here in the spreadsheet is he's 68 years old. He has, let's say, a 82% chance of getting to age 74. He's got only an 8% chance of getting to age 90. Then he's going to make an $8 million gift. We're showing gift number 4 here. And here's his portability allowance from his previous spouse, which is 0. Here is his estate tax exemption. If he makes an $8 million gift, it's down to $340. There's a little bit of use of his temporary exemption. There's his total remaining exemption. There's the estate tax liability. And this is the income tax that he's paying on the trust income, what Professor Hesch calls the burn, which reduces his estate. So the estate tax savings of each year he would die are shown on the right-hand side in the spreadsheet. And what I like about this is it just shows him he's saving $324 on every million until he gets to 7, and then he's saving a lot more. Let's go ahead and do another one to show what he saves between if he does another 2 million. So I click on duplicate, I go to the amount gifted, and I go from 8 million to 10 million, and now I see that savings. The difference between 8 million there that you see on the top and 10 million is much more than 324 a year. It's about $800,000 for every million that he gifts. And then he may want to see this more graphically. I can click on Trust Logistics. When I click on Trust Logistics and I properly fit this, then this is gift number 1. With planning is on the right, and without planning, I'm sorry, without planning, he's going to pay a $10 million estate tax. With planning, a $9,700,000 estate tax. So it shows him the $1 million gift growing at 2%. And of course, I can change any of these numbers that I want. I can also click on General Explanation, and I'll show you in a little while how I can have PowerPoints created for each of these instantly. So that's the large gift calculator, and just another example of how the calculators work. I'll just go to Cupert very quickly, show you that this is a 70-year-old who would like to do a 10-year Cupert. And it tells you instantly that the gift would be $833. And the annuity after the sale, if he transfers the house, if he stops living in the house during the 10 years, the trust has to pay him $175,950 a year. I will go to the more complex mode, and it shows me that if he lives 15 years, and the house grows at about 3% a year, the estate tax savings will be $1.6 million, and it shows me the rent that gets paid after the 10-year term. You can have rent start to get paid if you set it for rent to be paid. Click on Advanced, and now I get my rent shown. So you see the rent value where he was renting it before he died, and the additional savings from that. So I can lower my spreadsheet, and now he says, well, I like that idea, but I would like to do a 12-year Cupert. How would that look? Well, I click on duplicate, and I click 10 up to 12, and now the difference between 1 and 2 in yellow is 10 years versus 12 years. And the estate tax savings is a lot more, as you see there. So, but you take the risk, the probability of surviving goes down from 73% to 65%. But then he says, what if I give half of the house to a trust for my son and half of the house to a trust for my daughter, and I take a 15% valuation discount? Well, I click duplicate and I go down to the valuation discount and I put 15%. And now you have number 3 showing 15% instead of 0%, and the estate tax savings are another $40,000. So maybe that was worth doing, maybe it wasn't, depending upon the situation. Then I can go to generate explanation, and I can create a PowerPoint for each of these Cuperts. I can put his name in, Sri Kumar Rao. By the way, he's as neat in person as he is in a webinar. Then I click submit. Let me do that again. Oh, I have to say I want a PowerPoint, a planner's checklist, short explanation, and a general explanation. Click submit. All of those have now been created for me. And I can just turn off my Cupert explanation that comes up there, go to my computer, and for example, here is Cupert number 3. Here's a PowerPoint that's going to take the client through Cupert number 3. So Cupert number 3 was a 12-year Cupert. The client has a 66% chance of living 12 years. It's a $2 million home. The reportable gift is $567,000. The trust talks about what happens if he stops using the home during the term. He'll receive $153,855 a year through the term. Then if he dies after the 12th year, the estate tax savings, $917,000. Talks about the rent after the term is over, and provides the spreadsheet and further explanation. Okay, let me find my software. Where did I move it? It's around here somewhere, or I can just restart it. I don't know what I did with it, so I'll just restart it. When you restart the software, estate view.think, oops. This is user malfunction, not the software itself. Okay. There it is. So that is probably more than you want to know about the calculators. We do have instruction manuals and instruction videos. Oh, while I'm on this, the Cupert, I'll show you a little bit more. If I click on the speaker there, it will actually tell me about that particular Cupert. It's not that great, but it's certainly different than anything on the market right now. Okay, now I'm going to go through an estate plan for a married couple, and I'm going to take this one pretty slow. First, I'll give you a 4-minute overview, and then I'm going to take it slow and show you more of the features that I think you want to know about. So for single or married, comprehensive summary. On the left-hand side are the inputs. So down the left-hand side, I can put the amount of their investments, the value of their house, the growth rates, how much they're going to gift a year, how much their net income is a year, separate and apart from their investments, whether they want to do a Cupert, whether they want to give to charity. I can put all that down on the left, and I can change it as I play with this. And then on the right, I can tell the computer I want to see if they both die this year without planning, if they both die this year with planning, if they live to the life expectancy I'm providing here, if they do a bypass trust, if they do a Cupert, if they do annual gifting. And in the middle, as you saw, as I am clicking on these things, it is telling me the results. So for example, when I click bypass trust, you are seeing that they are beginning with a residence worth 3 million, investments worth 25,500,000, selected growth rates, life insurance policies. After the first death in year 16, they have a lot of assets. They have a bypass trust. After the second death in year 20, 23 million of estate tax, 62 million passing to beneficiaries. But if they'll do discounted annual gifting, in addition to this, I can click on discounted annual gifting on the right, and now the estate tax is down to 18 million, and the gifting trust has 7.3 million that will never be subject to estate tax. There's a second way to view it besides the view in the middle that I'm showing you. You can click on timeline, and when you click on timeline, it's showing you in red the estate tax that would apply each year if the second spouse dies that year, and you can move the numbers back and forth without having to go to the inputs. So if you don't like your client and you want to kill them off this year, you actually can. And then these different colored bands are the investment assets, the house, the bypass trust, the life insurance. So I'll go back and show you how I like to use this. Then also that button will tell you numeric details of the arrangement. And this button will allow you to see what actually happens in each trust each year, when it's funded, what it's worth, etc. Then the generate client letter feature allows you, believe it or not, to have the computer provide a letter explaining each of the strategies and including all of these color diagrams. And the share with client allows you to send the actual software to the client with the right to use it for 14 days, locked onto their name and within 20% of each of the primary settings, so they can only use it for themselves. So for those of you remaining, I'm going to go now into a more detailed explanation of the married couple. So across the top, I've got that I could either show my input or close off my input and make the chart bigger by hitting the show hide options button. I can click home, in which case I go back to this main screen. Then I can click on married clients to come back to where I was, and it will save my settings. Then under file, I can start a new illustration by clicking new, or I can save what I have by clicking save or save as under the client's name. And I can save a screenshot of what you see here so that you can always go back to what you see if you want to do that. And then you see generate client letter, generate PowerPoint, share with client. Now, the inputs are very, very thorough. We wanted them to cover just about anything we can do for a client in the 30 to 50 million range. So the top left, you have shortcuts. If I want to go directly to the inputs on a Cupert, I just click Cupert there, and it takes me to the Cupert input. If I want to do life insurance, it takes me to the life insurance input. And I can close those shortcuts so they don't take as much room. The next thing on the left is the strategies to activate. So I'm going to show a bypass trust, a qualified personal residence trust. I'm going to show annual gifting. I'm going to show gift discounts. I'm going to show life insurance, and I'm going to show an installment sale. I'm also going to show charitable, and we need to have a box for charitable. That is something in our technical corrections are coming. I can put in the firm name, my name, and then the client's name. and then I can put in the client's date of birth or just their age, depending upon how I want to determine their age, male or female, whether or not they're a tobacco owner, user, and then the year that they're expected to die based upon the year and the tobacco is 2033. But that's from standard mortality tables. Wealthy people tend to live longer, so we may give this person until 2035. How much of their estate tax exemption they've used in the past, the net savings above and beyond their investment income, or net spending. Some people spend more than they earn right now. Some people earn more than they save. How many years that will be until, and then what happens after that? Maybe this person plans to retire at age 70 and will go from saving $275 a year to net spending maybe $100 a year. Then you've got the spouse and the same information for the spouse, including what their income or outgo will be after the death of their spouse. Now, a shortcut, if you just want to show a single person and you were showing married, you could just click deceased, and then it becomes a single person illustration. Okay, so now I've got the 71-year-old female spouse with a 14-year life expectancy. So I'll just click that to give her until 2040. And then we've got what her outgo will be after the spouse dies until she's 80, and then what her outcome will be after age 80, after taking into account pensions and income and whatever that is. If I want a life insurance estimate, I can get it, and it will know their ages now, so I won't have to click their ages. That's kind of cool. If will they have a portability allowance? I can click that yes or no. We'll assume they will, so I have the box not clicked. And then will the exemption go to 50% in 2026? And I can tell them right off the bat, for example, that if the only planning they do is a bypass trust, and we don't have the exemption going down in 2026, then their estate tax is going to be 15 million. But if the exemption goes down in 2026, I can just click that, and now the estate tax is going to be, sorry, 6.9 million versus 15 million. So they may not be as confused or concerned. They may want me to run the numbers as if the exemption is not coming down. Then I can click on the estate tax rate, which is 40%. Now, we do not do state estate taxes. States like New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts that have state estate taxes, you might be able to estimate by clicking up from 40%, but we don't have that yet. We hope to have it eventually. What my inflation rate is, then my business and investment values, 25 million growing at 7.7%, paying 0.4% a year in investment advisory fees and 2% a year in income tax. Then do they have an explosive asset? Now, this is something you're not going to find anywhere else. Client comes, and this often happens, and says, well, I can value the business at 5 million, but it's going to sell in 5 years at 15. So I can click on explosive assets, and I can say, okay, it's worth 5 million now. Click to 5 million. It's going to be worth 15 million in 5 years. Click to 15 million. And then here's the income tax at that time. And then when we get down to installment sale, I'll show you that we can decide whether to sell part of that business now at a discount or not. So that's the exploding asset. Then they've got a home worth 3 million growing at 3%. I'll turn off Cupert. I'll assume if they're not going to do a Cupert. And I'm going to assume that they have 2 children for the next 10 years. And then after that, they'll have 2 children and 3 grandchildren. Total Crummy powers of 7 for gifting. And if they gift LLC interest, we'll take a, let's say, 30% discount. Should really probably make that 29% as a setting, but you can type in any percent you want. And then in a little while, I'll get to the life insurance, I'll get to the installment sale, and I'll get to charity. So what do we have so far here? Right now, we know that if they do no planning, and by the way, on the right hand, I can click on these options, and if I click on show hide images on the right hand side, then they're just short buttons instead of being fancy pictures, but they work the same way. So die in year 1, no planning, a $4 million estate tax. Die in year 1 with the planning, the bypass trust, and the annual gifting, and charity, 0 estate tax. Then if they do no planning and they live the 17 years, then you see here that after the first death, the estate is going to be 63 million. And on the second death, the estate is going to be 84 million. The house will be 5 million. The estate tax will be $18 million. So that's a pretty high percentage going to the estate tax, and I can show it this way as well. Plenty of estate tax, and they can say, well, what if we die earlier? Well, here's your estate tax each year that you might die. Okay, back to logistics. Well, if they do a credit shelter trust in year 12 when the first spouse dies, I can click there, and the estate tax goes from 18 million to 15 million. Now, the client at this point may say, wait a minute, what if I die in year 5? Well, I could either go back to the inputs that I showed you on the left, or I have a shortcut here. You see the lightning and lightning speed. I can click on lightning, and then I can just change a few things, such as the year of death of the first spouse. And I can click that down to 2027, and or 2025, there's 10 million in the bypass trust. But if I click to 2026, it would be half if I also was using the going to half in 2026. And if the client says, oh yeah, I forgot, my assets are really worth more, or I think the growth rate's too high, turn it down, I can just click right there. It immediately changes the entire picture, and you see the estate tax impact of this. So now they want to do annual gifting for those lovely children and future grandchildren. I click on annual gifting, and it shows me that the trust that they gift to will be worth $2.3 million on the second death if they don't use discounts. If they use discounted LLC interest with the 30% discount, now the gift trust at the end of the 17th year is $3.4 million, estate tax down to 13 million. So that's all a lot of clients need to see, because for a lot of clients, just using those techniques, we can avoid estate tax, but not for these people. So for these people, I want to talk about a Cupert now. So I can click on Cupert, and on the left-hand side, I can enter into one qualified personal residence trust. Now, I could get all the information about a Cupert from the Cupert calculator I showed you, but shorthand, if they want to do one Cupert funded by the husband, and he wants to put his half of the property into a Cupert, then that's worth $1.5 million. And if he wants to do a 5-year Cupert term, then the Cupert fails. So let's do a 3-year Cupert term, or make him live longer, but a 3-year Cupert term. The gift is $1,186,000. And then let's say that they pay rent after the Cupert term. So those are my settings there on the left. Now I click on the right. I want to turn on Cupert. So you click on you check that box, and now you see the Cupert. And now you see that half of the home is still in their estate on the left top. The other half of the home is out of their estate, plus the rent saves some estate tax. The estate tax went from 14,700,000 to 14,100,000 because it was a short Cupert. But maybe they want to do 2 Cuperts. So I could do a second Cupert. The second one's for her with similar settings and have significantly more in savings. Then I showed you annual gifting. I showed you annual discounted gifting. Now let's talk about life insurance. Now, right now, I am showing just one life insurance policy. It is not held in an ILET. It is on spouse number 1. He's going to pay $8,000 of premium for 12 years. It's a permanent policy. And then for another 15 years, he's going to pay $4,000 a year in premium. If he dies in the first 17 years, $750,000 death benefit. If he dies after the 17th year, $1 million death benefit. And what I'd like to show is that he'll put it into an ILET as part of my planning. So I copy policy. No, I add post-planning policy there. And then I can put it in a Cupert. I can put it into a life insurance trust. So before planning, no life insurance trust. After planning, I have a life insurance trust. So then when I go and click on life insurance, now it's showing me further savings, and it will do an unlimited number of policies for both the husband, the wife, and also second to die. So I could say, let's add a second to die policy. It's going to be a permanent policy automatically. It's going to be 15 years of premium at $8,000 a year, then $4,000 a year for life, $800,000 eventual death benefit. And I can put that into place with a life insurance trust. And now when I click on life insurance, it can show that policy also involved. I can turn off life insurance if the clients are turned off by life insurance, and I can show an installment sale and or charity. So the installment sale is more complicated than charity. So let's go to charity first. And quite frankly, I'm more happy when clients do the charity than when they do the installment sale. So I click on testamentary charity on the right-hand side. And on the left-hand side, I can either choose charity or charitable lead annuity trust. So it's simplest to choose charity. So and I want to turn off the installment sale so that we have an estate tax. So without charity, the descendants are going to get $74 million. The estate tax is $12 million. So remember that, $74 million for the descendants, $12 million for the estate tax. On the other hand, if I leave the amount of $29 million to charity, then the estate tax will be 0, but the children only get 56 million. So at the bottom there, it says the amount sacrificed by the beneficiaries to put 29 million in charity is 17 million. They may not like that so much. So I can go back to the charity input and say, well, what if we just left half to charity? Click 100 down to 50. Now they've sacrificed 9 million to allow 14 million to go to charity, and it's a family foundation that they can operate. But it gets better, because I could also do a charitable lead annuity trust. So I click on charitable lead annuity trust, and I can have 100% go to the charitable lead annuity trust. I can have the charitable lead annuity trust pay, basically, let's say 60% of its assets by present value to charity, 40% left to the descendants. So now the estate tax is 0. The descendants get 56 million on the second death, and 11 million 16 years later. So they've sacrificed 6 million for charity to get 17 million. I mean, I would trade 6 million of my inheritance if I had 17 million in a foundation that could employ my family if ever need be, is completely creditor proof, and feels good. So that helps with the charity. So now I'm going to show you some features before I go to installment sale. The first feature is, as far as loading up the information, if you feel a little cramped, you can click on these 4 arrows pointing out and it spreads. So now it's the whole page spread out, much easier to input. And then if you want to close it again, you just click on the X if you want it to disappear, or you click on the red cross looking thing if you want it just to go back to the size that it was. I can click on File to save it to my computer. I can click File, Save As, RAW, click Save. Now it's in my computer, and it's also a WordPerfect document. I use WordPerfect, so that tells me where it is on my computer. I could print that out so I don't forget. Or I could click New and start a new one. Now, I will say, if the computer closes down, you get a power surge, or if there was a problem with the software, when you reopen it, it has saved exactly where you are with all of the calculators and with your married couple matter. And then I could also just save a screenshot of what I was looking at. So I can always just go back to that screenshot and remember what it was. I can generate a PowerPoint. If I just click there, it will generate. And let's see it go. So now you see the blue across the bottom, and it's generating a summary PowerPoint. So now it's ready. I click here and I open the PowerPoint, and I'll move the PowerPoint to your screen so you can see it. For some reason doesn't want me to grab it. Let me see why not. There it is. Come here, you silly PowerPoint. So this PowerPoint, as you can see, just has all the diagrams for what I just showed them. So I can send them the PowerPoint, and that works well. And then I can also generate a client letter. So I click on Generate Client Letter. I choose which of the scenarios I want. I'll turn off the installment sale. I can show an introduction, which tells how the estate tax system works, and I can show those timelines. I can even show the details. I click on Generate Client Letter, and now while I'm waiting for it to be prepared, the computer talks and tells me what the numbers are for their scenario, so that time passes faster while you're waiting. But now the letter's ready, and I click on the letter, It opens as a Word document. Even though I use estate plan, no one else on earth does. And then the document explains the estate tax system and summarizes the inputs, and then explains each scenario and provides the diagramming. And then this is a Word document that I can rerun. So, you know, it used to take us a day and a half to prepare this letter off of spreadsheets, and it wasn't this good. So we're quite proud of that feature and quite proud of our original programmer, my son-in-law, David Archer, who got that working. It was just amazing. Okay, now I'd like to share the plan with a client. Well, I can open Zoom or go to my meeting or open Teams, and I can just say, hey, John and Mary, if you don't do anything, here's what happens. If you do this, here's what happens. If you do this, here's what happens. If you do that, here's what happens. They can watch that video as many times as they want, and they will learn how the estate tax system works, but they would like to play with the software themselves. So I can click Share with Client, and then it sets up a code. I can change the code to whatever I want the code to be. I click Generate URL, and the client will need passcode 253327, copy to clipboard. It's copied successfully. Now I just open an email, click paste, and the link goes there, and I can say, Dear John and Mary, please watch the video, and when you click here, you have 14 days to play with the software. Tell me what you think about these strategies and what you think you may want to do. So that is the Share with Client. There will be video tutorials. We don't have them yet. This will become one of them, and on a temporary basis. There will be an instruction manual that will be done pretty soon. So now I'll show you the installment sale, because the installment sale is the best thing going in estate tax planning for families between 15 million who are concerned and 100 million. The installment sale is fantastic. So I'll turn back on the installment sale here, and let's say that they will put, and I'll open this up so you can see it better. Isn't that nice? Okay, so I'm on the installment sale, and they're going to put 17,750,000 into an LLC. They're going to take a 30% discount and sell 99% non-voting for 12,425,000, and that's the discount after the value. So we need them to make a 10% seed capital gift. So if I'm going to sell an asset for a 12 million note to a trust for my children, we think the trust should have a value of at least $1,242,000. Now, what's neat about these numbers you see here is that if they say, well, what if I only do this with 10 million? Well, all I have to do is click down to 10 million and all the other numbers change, taking the discount into account. So I can click this up and down to my heart's content, or I could type in 15M, and then it automatically adjusts to a $15 million asset. And then if I'm going to sell my explosive asset, then I've got that explosive asset I showed you. It's worth 5 million now. Let's say in 7 years it'll be worth 14,500,000, and it'll be sold in year 7, and the tax will be 3,250,000 on sale. And do I want to sell that as part of the installment sale? Yes, I do. So now what percentage will I sell in the installment sale? Well, I'm going to say 100% for now. My interest rate, it knows that the applicable federal rate, lowest rate, 4.5%, conventional, not a skin. It knows my note payment amount will be $472,000. If I were to raise my interest rate, it would raise the note payment rate. I'm going to do a 20-year term, and it's going to be a grantor trust, so he's going to pay the income tax on the grantor trust. And then let's say that part of what's going in here is an S corp that shoots off 300,000 of income a year right now. And then if he dies owning the note, we will take a 15% valuation discount on the note. And if he doesn't make a 10% seed capital gift, let's say he makes a smaller seed capital gift, it warns you, oops, you need more ballast, but you could use a guarantee. So I can click on guarantee, and maybe the guarantee fee might be 3% of the note paid annually. The guarantee fee might be paid for 5 years, and then it would be paid to the gift trust. So now I can reduce the size of my assumptions, and let's see what this installment sale does. I'll go from discounted gifting. I've got 73 million in assets, 9 million 8 of estate tax. I click on installment sale. And when I click on installment sale, the estate tax goes to 0. Hooray, hooray. And when I look at the installment sale generator here, or the display, I see I'm starting with an 8.3 million net value because of discounts. And after the first death, the net value of that trust is 13 million. But after the second death, that trust is worth 45 million. That's the time value of money, and their estate is lower. So the client says, okay, well, that solves my problems. Do I need to do as big a sale? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is go to my timeline, and my timeline tells me that that sale does eliminate the estate tax for the entire situation. So now the client may say, let's go back to logistics. How much do I have at the time of death? I'll have, oops, I won't have enough money. I'll only have a $10 million note. I overshot it. Okay, that's too much. So we'll go to our lightning speed and we'll sell less. We could sell only 40% of the explosive asset, and then our assets, if we sell 40% of the explosive asset, then we'll have a little bit more, but still not enough. So let's only sell 20% of the asset. Close that. Now we've got a bigger estate. We can look at that on the timeline, and we see still a tiny bit of estate tax. So the key is that you can go ahead and get the program to where you want it, and these people don't need to sell as much. So if they sell, if they put 11,428,000 into the installment sale and 20% of the explosive asset into the installment sale, then I can stress test it by clicking timeline and see just an itty bit of estate tax there. And then I can turn the installment sale up to where the estate tax goes away. I can probably just do that by moving the explosive asset from, where was I on the explosive asset? From 20%, there's 30%, 40%, 50%. That doesn't look like a bad gig at all. Let's see where the logistics are. Okay, so now they don't run out of assets. They'll have an $8 million note, 2 million of assets. And even though that's a little bit maybe too much of a sale, I could go back and toggle off grantor trust status. So let's say they just decide they don't want to pay the income tax on that installment sale trust for their entire life. So I could say that we will toggle off grantor trust status in year 15. And that might be just what the doctor ordered to get to the right balance of assets. So that is my long version of estate view. Let me see if I can open my questions here and see what questions. There are still some of you here. I'm not completely alone. And it's not only my aunt and my mother, it's actual planners who stuck it out for 2 hours. Thanks again to Sri Kumar Rao, by the way. He is absolutely amazing. Okay, first question is this for sale? It's free right now. You go to estateview.link and you click on you put it estateview.link in your browser, and then you use the code word test@test.com and then the password test. And I'll show you that on the PowerPoint just when we're done here. Will you have a calculator for Roth conversions? Eventually. Will there be a poll discussion for CPE? No, because the CPE stopped at noon. This is without credit. When you go to Sri Kumar's YouTube channel, what will you click on? And the answer to that is just search Sri Kumar Rao or the Rao Institute, and you'll see a lot of really good videos. Then another question I see is how much will it cost? My plan is that we'll sell it for $199 to do the basic features, $399 to do most of the features, and $499 to do all of the features. If you're using one of the other programs that are similar to this, but of course don't have all our features, our version of for $199 should handle almost everything you've been doing with the other programs, so you can keep them and also just add us on, and then you can upgrade later if you want to. What type of computer can this run on? Any type of computer, Apple, iPad, even your phone if you have a magnifying glass. When will I have to start paying for it? I hope I'll be commercial April 1st, 2024. So that's in 4 months. A lot of hard work ahead of us to make sure we have the PowerPoints working properly and the practitioner to-dos, the sample form language and all that. A lot of work ahead of us. All right, I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint here and show screen again. Oh, I've been showing screen, that's right. So if you want to be a beta tester or just use Estate View for free, I'll just go to that screen. By the way, I'll be speaking at my undergraduate alma mater, Rollins College in Winter Park, January 26, 2024, on hot topics and charitable planning. And there's going to be a walking tour of the most beautiful campus in the country, regularly awarded that title, and then cocktails, which will be my favorite part of the presentation. And Saturday, December 16, Chris Rose coming back to talk about complex wealth structures. And let me find the, there you go. For Estate View, put estateview.link in your browser. Then use the password test@test.com, test@test.com is your email address, and then the password is the word test. Then the PowerPoint does point out, for those of you still here, thank you for your patience. Some of the things we do, we have the side-by-side comparisons, and a lot of things you'll do, and you'll see a red box appear. Those are warnings. We typically have rudders that prevent you from going too far off the campus, but there are rudders. You can calculate skin premiums beyond the life expectancy table, which the other calculators don't do. It actually uses the prorated first year payment for a charitable remainder trust, which is required under the regulations. which some of the other software programs don't do, so their numbers may not be exactly accurate. It allows you to show discounts, and to get a discounted present value on a charitable lead annuity trust, it's easy for me to say to the client, look, if you do this, 60% is going to your family, 40% to charity. But you know what? Charity gets its money sooner. So what's the present value of all that? Estate View does tell you that. Then it shows you the rent, the impact of rent on a CUPERT, and the impact of the burn of the grantor trust, where the grantor's grantor is paying tax on behalf of the trust. It provides the PowerPoints, which we talked about. I'm just trying to see if there's anything else I wanted to tell you other than the salesman stuff going on here. So the PowerPoint may help you as far as just having a checklist of what you want to make sure that you do. Another thing it does is for each calculator, it'll tell you you can use the lower of the following three, or maybe the higher of the following three 75/20 rates. I had forgotten, if I ever knew, that for some of these calculators, you have your choice of this month's 75/20 rate or the previous 2 months 75/20 rate. So it automatically tells you that. Also, for some of these calculators, you're supposed to use the last birthday, and for some of them, you're supposed to use the closest birthday. So if my birthday's next month, for some of these calculators, I should be using my next birthday, and the calculators automatically do tell you that. So, oh, the one other thing, there is an offer here. We're going to take this to Heckerling, and anyone who buys it before January 12th, so no hurry, but anyone who buys it before January 12th will have their costs locked in for 3 years. So thank you for putting up with all of that. Thanks again to Srikumar Rao for everything he's done for me and for many of my friends and many of my family, not to mention humanity in general. I welcome your further questions, comments, and suggestions, and have a great, great, great rest of your weekend. Thanks again.